mountain village in Switzerland lived a man whose strange experiments with the dead have since become a legend. A legend that is still told with horror the world over.
Frankenstein by Mary Shelley may be one of the most iconic pieces of literature of all time. This novel, written on a dark and stormy night, spawned countless movie adaptations. Some are era-defining.
When this dead hand moves, the monster created by a man they called Mad is turned loose to strike terror into the hearts of men.
And some are better left forgotten. The films are a subject for another day. Today we have something else to look at. The LEGO versions of Frankenstein's monster. LEGO graced us with 5 figures of the monster, all of which we will discuss in detail in order of release. Let's get into it.
Get ready!
Starting off with we have an absolute classic. Appearing in the 2001 studio set 1382 Scary Laboratory, we have HRF001 Frankenstein. This figure is one of 6 included in this set, which, if you are unfamiliar with the studio's line, actually depicts a movie scene being filmed. What this means is this figure you are looking at on screen is in fact not an actual monster, but a human dressed up in a Frankenstein costume to film a scene in a movie. Let's take a look at this figure from top to bottom, starting with the hat or headpiece they use to give this figure Frankenstein's iconic large forehead. This piece does not look bad. The zipper is a little strange to see on Frankenstein's forehead, but maybe that has something to do with it being a costume and not an actual monster. Below this is 2 eyebrow bumps, which give the piece a good shape. There are studs on the side, which is a nice touch as well. And it's worth noting that this is the only Frankenstein figure that does this, which is strange because this is an important piece of the monster's identity. The head itself is great. The printing on the back of the head is cool, but kind of strange, again, going with the zipper thing and some gears. The front print is convincing as a Frankenstein costume. When it comes to the body, they nail it. The patch brown jacket is synonymous with the Frankenstein monster we see on screen. The belt is a good touch too. The legs are just generic dark gray legs, but this makes sense as the monster was not known for wearing flashy pants ever. Overall, this is a great figure. One thing I can't overlook is the color of the figure. It is sand green, which is a bit off from the color we generally associate with the monster. Other than the zippers and the odd color choice, this is quite accurate to the films. Taking a quick look at the Scary Laboratory set, this figure is the star, literally and figuratively. The set includes many unique pieces, including printed pieces, a few sticker sheets, and even a CD that has sound effects on it. This is one of the greatest studio sets of all time, and I'm fortunate enough to have it in my collection. Don't worry, this isn't the last time you'll hear me discuss this set on this channel. Foreshadowing for a studio's retrospective? Yes, I think I am. Next, let's take a look at COL055, The Monster, from the 2011 Series 4 Collectible Minifigure line. Despite coming out 10 years after the first figure we looked at, this figure shares some similarities. The biggest similarity? The sand green coloring again. Let's break this figure down, starting with the headgear. It took 10 years to grow, but this Frankenstein's monster has hair. This is accurate to most of the Frankenstein films. Decorating this piece is band-aids that likely cover incision marks because, the monster is pieced together from multiple bodies. The last thing to note for this piece is the eyebrow bumps, which, much like the last minifigure, adds to the shape of the piece. Next up, the head. This head has a great print, and the dark green used for the eyes and cheeks makes it pop. The facial expression on this head reminds me a lot of the face we can see the monster making, always void of expression. It's not special on its own, but add the headgear on top and we have ourselves a monster. On to the torso, and this one is also very accurate to the films. The printing makes it very apparent that this jacket is worn, and the reddish-brown coloring goes great with the sand green hands and head. The staples decorating the monster's chest and the jacket are a nice touch. As for the legs, nothing special here, they are just plain reddish-brown legs. This is another great figure that depicts the monster well. It's good to see that this figure has hair now, as that's a staple of the monster's look, and the torso looks exactly like something the monster would wear. The sand green color is one of my favorites, but I just can't help but think there's a color that would be much more accurate for Frankenstein's monster. Speaking of a more accurate color, introducing MOF017, monster, also known as Frankenstein. This figure was part of one set, which released in 2012. That was set 9466, The Crazy Scientist and His Monster, which is a part of the Monster Fighters line. If you haven't heard, the entirety of the Monster Fighters line is basically a homage to the classic Universal monsters. I can promise there will be more Monster Fighters content in the future, but for now, let's just focus on the Frankenstein minifigures. Let's take a look at this one. Like the last figure, this monster has a full head of hair. Instead of band-aids, this headgear is decorated with safety pins. This piece has the eyebrow ridge and some nice thick black eyebrows. This is a great headpiece that has Frankenstein written all over it. Up next is the head. So an interesting thing to note on this one, it also has eyebrows. This is strange as the headgear piece already has eyebrows. What this does though is allows the head to be used in mocks and other minifigures that you create. I think it would actually make a great fantasy troll or ogre type race. The rest of the head printing is great. The monster has a great facial expression and the missing teeth and cheek lines are a great touch. This monster figure is sporting the classic brown stitched vest. This body piece is highly detailed with pockets, stitching, buttons, undershirt, and staples on the chest. This is an awesome body that is very accurate to many of the monsters we see on the big screen. As for the legs, again, nothing special here, just plain dark brown legs that match the jacket. I really like this minifigure of the monster. The olive green coloring seems to match the monster a lot better than the sand green used in the previous two figures, and the detailing on this figure is impeccable. Before we look at our last two minifigures, I just wanted to pop in here and say thanks a lot for watching this video. I'd love to hear which Frankenstein figure out of the four is your favorite and why in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. I have a lot of gaming and LEGO videos planned for the channel. Thanks again, and now let's get back to dissecting these monsters. Now this one really gives me Herman Munster vibes. This is figure MOF020, also known as Monster Butler. This figure was released in 2012 and was one of 6 figures included in the Monster Fighters Haunted House, set number 10228. This set is a piece of art. This haunted house is home to a vampire lord and the vampire lord's bride. Our monster is a butler in this home, teaming up with a zombie chef to serve the vampires. I could talk about this set for an entire video, but remember, we're here for the Frankenstein's monsters, and we have a lot to talk about with this figure. Starting from the top, we have stitches as the main decoration for this headgear. This monster still has a full head of hair and matching thick eyebrows that are also on a ridge. The head for this figure is very similar to the previous one we looked at, with eyebrows, cheek lines, and the same eye print. The biggest difference is the mouth printing, which makes this monster look a lot calmer than its green Monster Fighters counterpart. Moving on to the body, we take a step away from the traditional torn jacket we have seen the monster figures wearing so far. I must admit this monster is quite dapper. Remember, this monster is supposed to be a butler for the vampires, so it makes sense that it's sporting the formal vest and the white shirt with bow tie. The legs are just plain black legs. This figure may be a reference to Lurch, the butler of the Addams family. This would make sense as the character Lurch is a reference to Frankenstein's monster in many ways. The grayscale color scheme here reminds me a lot of the original Frankenstein film from 1931. This is a great figure that stands out from the rest of the monster figures due to its color scheme. I don't know how good of a butler Frankenstein's monster would be though.
No, you're hurting me! No!
Finally, finishing up our Frankenstein roster with COL14-12. This is the Monster Rocker CMF from Series 14. This figure was released in 2015 and again is quite unique compared to the others. Could this be a reference to the super obscure 1999 film Rock and Roll Frankenstein? Viewer discretion advised.
Final piece.
I got the game.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
You may have some side effects due to the divergent body parts.
Geez, I really hope it's not a reference to this.
Can't show my creation to the world.
Let's start with the headgear. This one is very similar to the Butler's headgear, but we are back to the olive green color. The print includes stitching, which may be the most accurate yet, and the eyebrows that sit on a ridge. The hair looks great here as well. And next up, the head. This head print is very similar to the first Monster Fighters figure we looked at. The major difference here is this monster is happy. This one is probably happy because he gets to play the Monster Mash all day on his guitar. What good is a rocker without a trusty jean jacket? This monster sports a patchy jean jacket with a shock and roll slogan on the back. This is a reference to how Frankenstein reanimates the monster, shocking it with lightning. This CMF also has arm printing and is wearing a padlock chain. Classy. This is the only monster that was blessed with printed legs. These jean legs go well with the rest of the outfit. This figure is the least accurate when it comes to the films. That being said, this is a creative take on the monster that would fit well in a Scooby-Doo-like cartoon or something. That concludes our look at the 5 LEGO Frankenstein's monsters that were produced up until this point in time. When compared to the monsters we see up on the big screen, some are a lot more accurate than others. Now let's take aspects from each of these figures and build us our own movie-accurate monster, just like the mad scientist did himself. I believe that the Boris Karloff version of the monster from 1931 is the most iconic, so that's what we're going to base our custom figure on. On the poster for the movie, the monster is close to olive green. However, the movie is in black and white, so for the purpose of this video, our custom creation will match that. Now let's get to piecing this monster together. Here it is, folks. We combined aspects from all of the figures we looked at today to create this, what I believe to be the closest we can get to Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. The first part we used was the headgear from the monster rocker. I chose this one due to the stitching pattern. Our monster's head is the Butler's head. I chose this because most of the time Boris Karloff's Frankenstein doesn't have much of a facial expression going on. The body comes from the Series 4 CMF, the monster, as it closely resembles what Frankenstein is wearing in the film. Last up, I chose the legs from the Butler, just plain black legs. I think these 4 pieces would give us our most accurate Boris Karloff's Frankenstein minifigure. There's just one last thing to do, and that's turn them all to black and white. Here is our monster. I hope this is a great start to your spooky season, and you learned a thing or two about how LEGO treated one of the most iconic monsters that has ever been brought to the big screen. Which figure was your favorite? Did any of them miss the mark for you? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a very early 2000s-like Halloween this year.